Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. I've had very little time lately because it will be soon Christmas, Hanukkah, all the celebrations, and of course there is a lot to do, not much extra time for my watercolor pigments, but I have found 1 hour today to film this video. There was a lot of research behind because the word of Quinacridone Magenta is quite complicated. It seems easy, but no, it is very complicated. So I was a bit confused and I'm making this clear for you today with this video. Stay with me. Ciao. As you know, I'm Elisabetta, a watercolor passionate from Italy, and today we're going through this pigment Quinacridone Magenta, which actually consists of two different pigments. We have PR122, which is probably the most common, then PR202, which is should be slightly darker. Let's see if it is true. But there are some brands that use other pigments for magenta, still quinacridone pigments. So some brands use PV42 or PV19. Let's swatch immediately this color to find out the differences. I'm so curious. So from what I understand, magenta is primary red in most ranges. It's slightly cool red for me. It's more leaning towards violet. But when you buy primary set of gouache or watercolor, often you have magenta as a red. Magenta actually is a city near Milan. It's one of the stops, train stops between Turin, where I live, and Milan, when I was born. And there was a famous battle in magenta, and this color, unfortunately, takes the name from all the blood that was poured in magenta, because it was a very, it was a massacre, actually, magenta. Let's start swatching. Okay, we start from the most common pigment used for quinacridone magenta, and it is PR122, quinacridone magenta. As usual, I will start with Winsor & Newton. It's for me a benchmark brand, and this is quinacridone magenta by Winsor & Newton. I hope you can see, yes. You know that quinacridone colors are very performing. They were originally invented or discovered for cars because they're so performing. They are very lightfast, they are transparent, they're very intense, and this quinacridone magenta is actually no less than that. Let me water it down. Delightful rose when watered down. And then we will mix some. This quinacridone magenta is a new chapter in our series of quinacridone colors. Then we have quinacridone rose magenta by Rembrandt. Rembrandt for me is a very advisable brand. It's the brand that I like very much because it's very good quality, very high quality, and good price point. So for me it's a good alternative to the most expensive brand. It's still expensive because it's artist grade. It's part of the group Royal Talents, the makers of Van Gogh student grade watercolor, which are very good also. And this is quinacridone rose, same pigment, not very different I find from the Winsor & Newton. Maybe I have put more color, so there is some human error as you know. It's so transparent. We water it down. I don't know, maybe I have put more color, but seems to be even more intense than Winsor & Newton. That's probably my mistake, but we let these dry. Quinacridone colors are notorious for having a very low drying shift. Let's see if PR202 122 has the same. Then we have Lucas. For Lucas, I have this palette that I have reviewed, was probably my first video in my channel. I will put you the link. And it's a very, very nice brand, Lucas. I like it very much. It's not fancy, but it's very good quality, reasonable price as well. And here is Magenta from Lucas. I go to a watercolor class every Monday, and I take this palette, this set with me, so I'm using it a lot. Okay, completely different, I think. It's slightly less intense, less dark in mastone. It's very similar once diluted, but it's very different in mastone. And I don't know, there is almost a sensation of white, but it's probably not true. Let me put more here. No, I can't get any darker than this. Let's see when it dries, but it's very similar in hue, but less intense than Rembrandt or Winsor & Newton. I really like Lucas, but when I compare to other brands, it's maybe one small, very small step below. Then I have a surprise. This is Renaissance Intense, a brand that I have never tried before, but during Black Friday, there was a sale on an Italian site, and I bought a small set of primary colors with cyan, primary yellow, magenta, and I got this purple magenta by Renaissance. I have a friend, an Italian watercolor artist, Eleonora, who always recommend this brand to me, so I was very curious. In Italy it's not very popular, but I know that in America it is considered very high quality grade. I have also ordered some Rosa Gallery from Ukraine, but about 1 month ago, but it's not leaving Ukraine. With the war, it's very complicated. But I will swatch all my Quinacridone Rosa Gallery when they arrive, because it's a way to support Ukraine for me. So this is Renaissance. Renaissance has honey, so it's very soft, and probably once you pour it in pans, it stays slightly sticky, which for me it's nice property actually. Some people don't like that, but I really love when I pour paint in pans and it stays soft and sticky. I really like that. So there is Flown pepper is not as good as maybe others. There is, you see, a small step here, but once again, might have been my way of distributing color, putting less paint, but it's very, very nice. And so far, I think they're all very similar, this PR122. Then I will skip one and I'll explain you why, and I'll go to blocks. My Quinacridone Magenta is part of this wonderful set that I bought at half the price during a sale for Black Friday. And I'm so happy that I have tried this brand because it's really beautiful. And here it is. blocks. It's called Quinacridone Magenta. This is also in a pan like Lucas, but look at the difference. This block is almost an artisanal brand because they grind the pigments in a stone mill, and they have beautiful colors. They're very expensive, and but I really was very well impressed by this brand. I will put the link of the video of the review in the notes. It's beautiful color blocks. And then I have two more paint using PR122, but they're not calling it magenta. It's a Romance Smile with Quinacridone Pink and Schminke with Opera Rose. I will start with Schminke. PR122. Usually Opera Rose can be slightly fugitive. I was told once, don't use Opera Rose because it's fugitive, and I never realized that my Opera Rose, which I was using so sparingly because I was convinced that it was fugitive, actually it was made with the Quinacridone Magenta PR122, so I will use it more often. And actually, you see, it's a lovely hue, slightly fluorescent, but it's the same pigment of this, completely different. It's more cherry. It's really lovely. Maybe it is fugitive. They might have put some different binder or additive to make this fluo effect. And now my gorgeous new set by Roma Schmal, and it is Quinacridone Pink. They call it Quinacridone Pink, but I think it's more a magenta. The foam paper is amazing. This paint is wonderful. I think that I'm waiting for the next sale, but I want to buy more Roma Schmal. Really wonderful. And these look very much the same. Blocks looks slightly different. Striky, I don't know. The Opera Rose is completely different, but this is my group of PR122. Now we're moving to PR202. It's another version of Quinacridone Magenta, and we have My Mary, the Italian brand, with this Quinacridone Magenta, and yes, it's PR202 because I'm really scared to make mistakes because it's a complicated word, these of Quinacridone Magentas. And yes, it might be slightly darker actually compared to PR122. It's very beautiful though. Magenta originally was a dye, and then it became a pigment. It's a very beautiful color. I think especially in mixes we will play. Oh, this is so saturated, so pigmented, I can't water it down. And this is My Mary, Magenta Quinacridone Magenta PR202. And then we have one more Rembrandt. Yes, we have one more Rembrandt, and it is Quinacridone Red Violet, because PR202 is slightly darker compared to PR122. I think this is more rosy, this is more violet, but still considered a magenta. And see the difference. Small binder issue, but very small, so I will pretend not to. I have removed the binder. And this is Rembrandt. I have put it just below the Quinacridone Rose Magenta to see better the difference. And yes, it is darker, I think, and more intense. Of course, we need to let them dry. And it's very vibrant. It's more vibrant than my Mary, and the my Mary really is very close to the PR122, but this is so vibrant. Wow. It's a very interesting color. We will check how different they are in mixes, these two pigments. And then I have Quinacridone Magenta by Daniel Smith of PR202. Daniel Smith has a wonderful range of quinacridone colors. I don't have an M-gram version, unfortunately. I have quinacridone rose, but not magenta. Oh, this is so easy to spread on paper. Incredible flow. And it's not as fluorescent as the Rembrandt version, but it's very, very intense. Let me add some more. To be fair, for a fair comparison. It's very intense. And that's all for PR202. And then we have PV42, which is actually quinacridone pink, but Schminke calls it magenta. It's not their quinacridone magenta. I think that for quinacridone magenta they use PR202, but it is magenta, just magenta to cure. This small tube. And it is PV42. This should be slightly less lightfast than its siblings. And hand says, don't use it. You have PV19. This should be in between PV19 and PR122. You can replace it with PV19. It's definitely much rosier. But yes, it can still be considered a magenta, this type of primary red. I wish I had the quinacridone magenta by Schminke, but I don't have it. But PV42 is a quinacridone color, so I have included it. If someone has it, maybe you can comment if you have it and tell me if you see a difference, although on screen it's slightly difficult to describe exactly the difference, to see the exact difference. I should swatch them side by side, maybe in the future, but I don't have it. Then, same pigment, PV42, I have Daniel Smith Quinacridone Pink. And they call it pink, which is their real name. And it is actually, for me, it is very much magenta. It's very nice, but it is rosier than the previous pigment. But as I have only these two paint with PV42, I thought it would be interesting to compare them in this video. Very vibrant, very pinkish. So it should be light fast, but maybe not as much as the other quinacridone colors. Then I have two more magentas. They don't call them quinacridone magenta, but they use PV19, which is quinacridone rose or quinacridone violet. Let's see immediately. I have blocks. You remember that we had blocks. We had this one, which is quinacridone magenta, and then they have magenta, without saying quinacridone, but it is a quinacridone color, PV19. Let's see. It's definitely a violet, but it's very nice. It is a magenta, but more on the violet side than all the previous swatches, I think. Okay, this is Magenta by Blocks, and it is more maybe a Quinacridone Violet, but it's a nice color. And then we have one more magenta here, which is Primary Red Magenta by My Mary, and once again it's PV19, and they call it Primary Red Magenta. Completely different. It's lovely. It's much warmer. It's almost a Quinacridone Red, but it isn't. I'll show you. It's PV19. I don't know if you can see it. PV19. It's beautiful. It's almost cherry red. And this is PV19. Then I wanted to show you one more color, which is Dusk Pink by Rembrandt. And it is PR122 plus Mars Black, PBK11. And it's a very nice color for sunsets. It's a granulating color because you know that Mars Black, it's a granulating. It's a granulating black. Here. This is one of the dusk colors by Rembrandt, which are very interesting. It's magenta and black. We let this dry. This paper doesn't favor so much granulation, but it should be granulating. Okay, we let this dry. Now we try some mixes just to check out the differences between these different magentas. Okay, very good. I have prepared my sheet of paper, and here we have the 4 types of magenta, and here we have some colors from my usual set from Paul Rubens that I always use for my mixes, or almost always. So we start with cadmium yellow. I put some cadmium yellow. And I might speed up the process so you don't fall asleep in the meanwhile. So you see they're very different, the mixes with yellow, and PV19 in this version by Blocks is almost a brown because it has a violet in it, and the PR202 is also slightly more earthy, whereas PR122 and PV42 are clearly oranges. Let's go to ultramarine blue. And this was ultramarine blue. You see that with the PV19 you have the deepest value in this moment, the deepest purple, because that's already leaning towards purple. and they're all different. It's very interesting. Let's go to Viridian. I hope we get a nice gray. And this was Viridian, also very different result. PV19 is very curious. It's almost a very dark blue, almost a black. Very, very interesting. The magenta completely disappears in this mix. Now we go to yellow ochre. I hope you can see all the differences already that I see in natural daylight. I hope you can see them on screen. There is a lovely flocculation on this PV19, bizarre. And I will be back when they're dry to draw our final conclusion. I'll see you in a few minutes. Our magenta colors are completely dry now. What do you think? Do you see a lot of difference among them? I see a difference between the pigments, but I don't see an incredible, huge difference among brands. Maybe Lucas is slightly weaker in PR122, and Winsor & Newton and Rembrandt are more saturated. Blocks has these bizarre strikes, but it's beautiful color. And this pigment can also be very different if treated as an opera rose. But I would say that the hue is very much the same. It's just the intensity that changes from one brand to the other. PR202 is definitely slightly different, but they're not so dramatically different as the differences we saw in Cobalt, in the Cobalt series. Here, I would say if you need a magenta and you buy Quinacridone Magenta, they're very, very similar in hue. This is probably darker, PR202, more intense, and there will be probably some differences in mixes. But used pure, the color is very, very similar. Then we have these two, PV42, much warmer. It's magenta and quinacridone pink. Schminke calls it a magenta, but it's more a pink actually. And it is very different from the previous two. And then we have magenta by Blocks and magenta by Mary. And once again, this by Blocks is almost a violet. It's bluer than the previous swatches. And magenta, the opposite, still a PV19, still a magenta, but it's more a cherry red. It's almost a quinacridone red. It's almost a PR209. Maybe I should swatch them side by side. It's very warm, lovely, delicate cherry red. And then this is the dusk pink, grateful. Moody Sky, great color. I like to use it. Let's see the mixes now. I know I miss some very important colors because I don't have quinacridone. I don't have quinacridone magenta by Schminke. I only have the simple magenta, and I also missing some important brands that I know that my followers like that are less easy to find here in Italy, like Core or Holbein, Ciao. It would be really lovely if you could let me know what you use and how you use them and which one is your favorite one. It is not a color that I use very, very often, but for me today it's a discovery. I love the mixes, and for me it's a great color to mix gray. It's also probably a great color to desaturate any green. Just add a touch of magenta, you desaturate any green, and it's great for creating purples, I think, but let's find out. Okay, let's go to mixes. So this is my favorite part where we see the mixes. I'm just watching the Pure Color PR122 by Renaissance, Daniel Smith, PR202, Quinacridone Magenta, very similar. Schminke PV42, more cherry, and PV19 Magenta, more violet by Blocks. Very saturated, very nice. Okay, the mixes are dry now, and I have some wet paint in the corner because I haven't diluted well enough, but they're dry. And I'm impressed by how different the mixes are. I start by saying that PV42 has the more delicate impact on mixes. I like the transparent blue, this glowing orange, this beautiful brick color with some cherry touches, warm. Whereas between PR122 and PR202, I just say that PR202 is darker, and the mixes are more intense, so you don't exactly get the same result if you mix a magenta with PR122 or PR202. You will get a darker value with this latter, the PR202, a darker gray or darker earthy red with yellow ochre, almost an earthy orange, very beautiful orange, this one with cadmium yellow, PR202, whereas the result with PR122 is maybe somehow cleaner and more breezy, delicate. I love this PV42. I know it's less lightfast, maybe, but the mixes are adorable, wonderful. It's a wonderful hue. I'm so happy I discovered this. I think I will use it very much in the future because I like the mixes and I like the hue itself. And then this PV19 by Blocks is definitely a violet. So in the mixes, it unlocks, it gives away its violet nature. Look at the yellow ochre. Probably in a lighter value would be delightful flesh tone. The gray is it's dark blue. With the ultramarine also leans a lot towards a dark blue. And Viridian, it stays very, very obvious, the green component. And with cadmium yellow, you get an earthy tone, almost burnt sienna. It's very nice. It's an earthy tone, and it is the violet component that gives not an orange, but an earthy tone, because it leans so much towards violet, this magenta by Blocks. It's an interesting one. Do you have any favorite mixes? How do you use your magenta? You know, I adore chatting with my followers, so if you let me know, I will be so happy. And that's all for now. I have to stop. Tomorrow my son is coming back from university, so I'm stopping with watercolor for a while, just be a mom, and baking and cooking and spoiling my son. So thanks a lot for having watched this with me, and ciao and buon Natale, Merry Christmas to everyone. Have a great holiday, and I'll see you maybe in the new year or just before, if I have some days off, so I might come up with a new quinacridone color. Ciao, ciao, ciao. Thanks a lot for having stayed with me, and my best wishes and season greetings. Ciao, ciao, ciao.